Ukrainian Law at Ease. Hello, friends. My name is Marichka. I am the lawyer, and you are listening to Ukrainian Law at Ease podcast. I thought it might be a great idea that more people, and not only Ukrainian speaking persons, get the opportunity to learn about Ukrainian law by listening to the podcast. Some of you already know that I have Ukrainian edition of the podcast, which is called Prosto Юридично. So this is going to be the English edition to the main podcast. So please welcome. As I promised earlier, I slightly updated the design of the podcast, so I hope you like it and enjoy it as I do. Also, some of the episodes are going to be in English, so please spread the word about it to your English-speaking friends as well, not only to Ukrainian ones. Before we move on, I already have a so-called tradition. I would like to announce the disclaimer to this episode and the podcast overall. Neither this episode nor entire podcast is a legal consultation and or advice, and nothing in this episode or any other episode shall be interpreted as a legal solution of your personal legal problems. This episode and the podcast overall are aimed to educate the listeners and help them to learn and understand the law in Ukraine better and easily, and I hope with less pain as well. All right, so here we go. Today's episode is a so-called introduction to Ukraine and Ukrainian law. For those who doesn't know about Ukraine, I hope there are no such people in here. I want to briefly tell about my beautiful motherland. Ukraine is a country which is situated in Europe with the city of Kyiv as its capital. Important note to every foreigner. It is actually correct to say Kyiv, not Kiev. When we're already talking about the correct pronunciation here, it is correct to say Ukraine, not the Ukraine, since Ukraine is an independent country and it is not. It is no longer part of any union, federation, and so on. Ukraine is a unitary state, which shall mean that no internal or external divisions and subdivisions are allowed. Also, Ukraine has declared in its constitution to be a legal democratic state. Ukraine is a republic. Also in Ukraine, all three branches of power are represented, namely legislative, which is embodied in the parliament. In Ukraine, the parliament is called Verkhovna Rada, or Supreme Council of Ukraine. Executive branch of power is represented by the government. In Ukraine, it is called the Cabinet of Ministers. And the judicial is represented by the courts, the court system of Ukraine. I promise you I will have a separate episode on the judiciary in Ukraine since it definitely deserves a separate episode, and I believe it will be of a great use and interest for each of you, both Ukrainians and foreigners. And I will tell you in details what is the system, the court system of Ukraine, what are the types of jurisdiction. Also, I will briefly explain the category of cases that are tried by Ukrainian courts and probably some other things as well. Ukraine, as a state, has got a long, vivid, and really complicated history, which is dating back to 9th century when the Kievska Rus was established. Technically, there were several tribes living on the territory of modern Ukraine, but as a country, as a state with its laws and rulings, Kyiv Rus should be considered as the true ancestor of Ukraine now. Ukraine became fully independent in 1991 after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Currently in Ukraine there are 24 oblasts. Oblast is something kind of a region or province. So you can understand that this is basically part of administrative and territorial order of Ukraine. Also in Ukraine there is one autonomous republic, Crimea, and two cities with special status, Kyiv and Sevastopol. Um, Ukrainian legal system actually is considered to be a continental. So I hope you have heard or know that there are mainly two legal systems introduced in the world. The first one is a common law system, which is represented in such countries as the United States, Canada, England, Wales, and so on. And the continental, this which is represented in continental Europe and other countries. So Ukraine is among these countries. Also, Ukrainian legal system belongs to the Romano-Germanic legal family, and this shall mean that our law is written, and in many cases it is codified. The main law of Ukraine is Constitution, which was adopted in 1996. By the way, interesting fact, they say Ukrainian constitution is considered to be one of the most democratic constitutions in the world. Laws and other legal acts shall be adopted on the basis of the constitution of Ukraine and shall conform it. In the event any legal act or law is recognized to confront constitution of Ukraine, it shall be recognized by the Constitutional Court of Ukraine as non-constitutional. In Ukraine, a human being with his her rights and freedoms is recognized as a core value, and all the other assets, including the government and law and property and so on, are considered to be the secondary one. It is interesting to know that in Ukraine there are many types and many areas of law, but I would like to outline the core ones. Basically, these ultimate areas of law set the beginning and the development of other areas of law. So the first one, probably one of the most important, is constitutional law that regulates and determines the constitutional order in our country, administration and justice. It secures the fundamental human rights and freedoms. And of course, the main source of constitutional law is the Constitution of Ukraine. Civil law is another important area of law in Ukraine, regulates legal relations between such subjects of law as individuals, also known as natural persons, legal entities, various communities, state, and other subjects of public law. The main source of civil law is the Civil Code of Ukraine. However, it is not the only source, of course, since there are many non-codified laws that regulate civil legal relations as well. In the event when there is any dispute or controversy between the aforementioned subjects of the law of law. Civil procedural law comes in handy as it establishes establishes the procedure for consideration and resolution of such disputes, which are also can be called as civil cases. The main subject of the civil procedural law in Ukraine is Civil Procedural Code of Ukraine. So you may see it's a kind of a game of words, and in the other hand, on the other hand, it is very easy to memorize the things. Criminal law. This is the realm of law which defines which acts are considered to be crimes and what penalties apply to persons who have committed such crimes. It also establishes the grounds and conditions for bringing individuals to criminal liability and the sanction system. And the only one and only source of criminal law in Ukraine is the Criminal Code of Ukraine. So it is considered to be the ultimate source where you may find the definition of each and every crime and what is the punishment for committing such a crime. Criminal procedural law is the law that establishes the procedure for consideration and resolution of criminal cases. And the main source of criminal procedural law is, as you may have already guessed, is the Criminal Procedural Code of Ukraine. Yes, still very simple. Administrative law. This is the law that regulates relations arising in the sphere of public administration. So in this case, the acts of the state, its bodies, agencies, inspections, relations with natural persons, legal entities, and so on is regulated by administrative law. The main source of administrative law of Ukraine, no, it's not the codified act, since such a source should have been the Administrative Procedural Code of Ukraine, but it hasn't been passed by the parliament. So, in Ukraine, as I already mentioned, there are many other areas of law. For example, family law, land law, environmental law, labor law, and many others. However, all of them actually take their roots from the aforementioned areas. As you may hear already, Ukraine is a pretty law codified country, and yes, this is true. Another important and interesting fact about Ukraine and its legal system and laws is that there is a single form of citizenship in Ukraine. This shall mean that when a natural person, in this case a citizen of Ukraine, decides to gain the citizenship of a foreign country, such person automatically forfeits his or her citizenship of Ukraine. This is the constitutional principle. It is stipulated in the constitution. And yes, in the event when the citizen of Ukraine decides to hold, for example, citizenship of the United States, which is kind of popular among Ukrainians, such person is considered to be excluded from citizenship of Ukraine. Also, I would like to tell a few words about the status of Ukrainian language. The state language of Ukraine is Ukrainian language, logically. Ukraine, as a state, shall ensure comprehensive development and functioning of Ukrainian language in each and all spheres of social life throughout the entire territory of Ukraine. Well, recently, kind of last year, the special law was passed on the status of Ukrainian language, and it prescribes the quite long and exhaustive list of spheres where Ukrainian language, the usage of an application of Ukrainian language is mandatory, and only within the framework of private communication and various religious rituals and services, other languages are allowed. I believe it is worth mentioning that according to the constitution and laws of Ukraine, foreigners and stateless persons who stay in Ukraine legally enjoy the same rights and freedoms and also have the same obligations as the citizens of Ukraine, except for certain political rights and duties. For example, foreigners and stateless persons are not entitled to vote in Ukraine, to take part in elections, to elect both local and state authorities. They are not allowed to vote for a president, for members of parliament, both on local and national levels. Foreigners and stateless persons cannot service in the army. They cannot are not allowed. Sorry, they are not allowed to hold state and public posts and offices. Also, they are not entitled to be elected to local and state authorities, and some other limitations are also imposed on foreigners. However, in general, foreigners and stateless persons have a great variety of rights and obligations, of course, along with Ukrainian citizens. Foreigners and stateless persons can enter the territory of Ukraine with the availability of passport or a special document, and which certifies the personality of the person. And in many cases, there is a requirement to obtain visa prior to enter Ukraine. However, certain international treaties establish that citizens of some countries may enter Ukraine without visas. For example, all member countries of the European Union, citizens of the United States, Canada, may enter Ukraine without visa. The term of stay of the foreigners and stateless persons in Ukraine usually is limited to maximum of from 90 till 180 days. Foreigners and stateless persons who are interested in working in Ukraine shall obtain a work permit and afterwards obtain a temporary residence permit. These documents will allow foreigners and or stateless persons gain legal grounds to live and work in Ukraine. I will also dwell upon this interesting topic in a separate episode. I will tell in details what are the types and options for foreigners and stateless persons to travel to Ukraine. What are the documents required to enter Ukraine and stay here? And what is the procedure to get the legalization in Ukraine for foreigners and stateless persons? So as you see, foreigners and stateless persons have many rights and obligations along with Ukrainians. That is why it is important for each and every foreigner and stateless person coming to Ukraine to know and follow Ukrainian laws. Luckily, you already have the podcast Ukrainian Law at Ease, which will be supplemented and enriched with many more interesting episodes. For those of you who like to listen to the podcast but do not know English language, I still recommend to listen to Просто Юридично. You may also find a lot of information there as well. I would like to Sincerely, thank you for listening to this episode. That would be it for now. I will definitely record and publish more episodes further next time. Um, I would like to encourage you to stay tuned for more facts about Ukrainian law in further episodes. Please do not forget to subscribe, to like this episode and others as well, and share the information about this episode to your friends and family. So, goodbye and take care.